President Trump also slapped 50% tariffs on copper imports, but he exempted refined metals. You can see the huge plunge that had in U.S. traded copper, down 22% in the 2 days, about 20%.
And now today we're doing copper.
What would that tariff be on? The sectional tariff?
I believe the tariff on copper, we're going to make it 50%.
50%.
They don't like it. They like resolution. But they'd also like another. They want the right kind of resolution. They want a deal that makes sense for.
Imagine waking up to find that in less than a single day, the United States had lost access to more than $2 billion worth of critical raw materials. That's exactly what happened when a new trade policy kicked in, and the shockwaves were immediate. Copper prices on U.S. markets exploded by roughly 13% overnight, hitting nearly $6 per pound, the highest level ever recorded. On the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, traders were stunned. The spike didn't just rattle Wall Street, it sent tremors through Main Street. From electronics manufacturers to construction firms, it felt like the economic floor had been yanked out from under them. And here's the thing, this was only the opening act. The real economic pain was just getting started. Before we unpack the chaos, take a second to hit that like button. It's the fastest way to help this channel cut through YouTube's algorithm and keep you in the loop. So, what caused this sudden upheaval? The spark was a single, high-profile announcement from President Donald Trump. In early July, he unveiled a 50% tariff on all imported copper, using a rarely invoked trade law to justify it on national security grounds. The move was first revealed in a closed-door cabinet meeting, then blasted across his social media channels. Trump's message was clear. Copper isn't just another industrial metal, it's essential for America's defense and technological dominance. He highlighted its role in everything from ammunition and fighter jets to semiconductors and national power grids. Framing the tariff as a way to revive America's domestic copper production, Trump gave industries just weeks to prepare before the new duty hit on August 1, 2025. He pointed to his earlier trade battles over steel, aluminum, lumber, and autos as proof that he could force industries to come home. But copper is different. It's the silent backbone of modern infrastructure, woven into almost every sector of the economy. And the moment Trump's declaration went public, the ripple effects were brutal. Prices soared, foreign suppliers balked, and nervous CEOs began holding emergency strategy meetings. Yet, the biggest twist was still to come. One of America's most trusted allies would soon launch a countermeasure so unexpected, it would flip the entire situation upside down. And when you hear what they did, you'll understand why this copper clash might just be the opening chapter of a much bigger trade storm. In this analysis, the shockwaves from Trump's copper tariff became impossible to ignore. Before we continue, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to help the channel grow and keep you ahead of the curve on global events. The moment the announcement hit, the global copper market went into full whiplash mode. In the U.S., copper futures exploded as buyers scrambled to lock in supply before the new tariff deadline. Within hours, prices hit uncharted territory, $5.65 to $5.69 per pound, levels no American exchange had ever seen. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the London Metal Exchange told a very different story. Instead of climbing copper prices, they actually dipped slightly. Traders feared U.S. demand for imported copper would crater, pushing global supply elsewhere and nudging prices down. The result? A rare and dramatic price split between New York and London. By some estimates, American copper was suddenly up to 25% more expensive than the international average. In a market built on instant arbitrage and interconnected supply chains, that kind of gap is almost unheard of. And where there's a gap, there's an opportunity. Savvy traders immediately began hunting for ways to cash in. Could they route copper through countries exempt from the tariff? Could refined copper be mislabeled as alloy or scrap to dodge the new duty? The rush was on. Container ships were booked in record time. Supply contracts were torn up and rewritten overnight. What unfolded looked less like a stable trade policy and more like the Wild West of metals trading. Critics argued this was the core flaw in the tariff's design. Instead of protecting U.S. producers in a steady, controlled way, the rollout sparked a frantic scramble that could still allow foreign copper to slip through back doors. For American companies, higher prices meant higher costs they would almost certainly pass on to consumers. But the real drama came from the north. The United States leans heavily on Canada for copper. Roughly half of its refined copper imports come from across that border. So when Trump's tariff landed, Ottawa's reaction wasn't quiet diplomacy. It was something far more direct, a retaliation that would make this trade fight personal. Canada was holding a powerful economic weapon, and Ottawa wasted no time unsheathing it. Just days after Trump's tariff announcement, Canadian officials signaled their fury in the clearest possible way. They effectively froze all copper export contracts to the United States. Major mining companies like Teck Resources and Hudbay Minerals, pillars of Canada's base metals industry, abruptly halted shipments bound for American buyers. Warehouse orders were cancelled. Rail cars loaded with copper cathodes were redirected to other destinations. It was an extraordinary step, but to Canadian leaders, there was little alternative. In their eyes, Washington had become an unpredictable trading partner, one willing to change the rules of commerce overnight without consultation or warning. As one insider bluntly put it, you can't rely on a partner that unilaterally rewrites the playbook. The market atmosphere flipped instantly. American electronics manufacturers, construction firms, and automakers woke up to find that their most convenient copper source had vanished overnight. A supply crisis gripped these industries, likened by some to wartime shortages for its suddenness and severity. Copper, the quiet metal that threads through every circuit board, every electrical wire, every motor, was now at the center of a full-scale trade war. And this time, American industries and consumers were directly in the crossfire. Without Canada's steady stream of refined copper, U.S. manufacturers scrambled to secure alternatives from Chile, Peru, or other global suppliers, often at ruinous spot market prices. The cost of raw copper in America, already inflated by the tariff, threatened to climb even higher as scarcity loomed. This raised a critical question. What happens when a trade policy designed to protect American industry ends up pushing it to the brink? For Canada, the move wasn't just about anger, it was about strategy. Ottawa was executing a calculated plan to lessen its dependence on a volatile American market. Rather than stockpile unsold metal, Canadian producers pivoted almost overnight toward Asia and Europe. Mines in British Columbia and Ontario that had long sent their output south now saw their copper concentrates and cathodes bound for ports in Japan, South Korea, and even China. Canadian trade officials fanned out across the globe to strike new deals, while smelters in Asia were more than happy to take what the Americans would have to forego. In one decisive stroke, Canada began cutting the United States out of its copper supply chain, and the ripple effects had only just begun. The Canadian government quickly escalated its response, announcing a bold $1 $8 billion investment package aimed at reshaping its copper export landscape. The funds would go toward expanding port capacity, building new shipping facilities, upgrading rail lines, and modernizing refineries, everything needed to open faster, more reliable pathways to global markets beyond the United States. This was no short-term workaround. It was a statement of intent. Canada was positioning itself not just as a reliable raw material supplier, but as a strategic, independent force in the global copper trade, one that would never again be beholden to U.S. trade policy. In effect, the first major counterpunch in this trade war did not come from Washington, it came from Ottawa. Trump's tariff may have landed like a hammer blow, but Canada's retaliation was more akin to a jiu-jitsu maneuver, using the weight of America's own action against it. By redrawing the map of its copper exports, Canada was reducing its vulnerability to U.S. tariffs and, at the same time, striking directly at a core weakness in the American plan. Market analysts predicted that within a year, Canada's share of copper exports to the U.S. could fall sharply if its diversification push stayed on track. The ripple effects were already profound. For decades, the United States operated under the assumption that Canadian resources would always be available. Now, American copper fabricators, Wire manufacturers and electronics suppliers were staring at the prospect of raw material shortages, or paying steep premiums to import metal from much farther afield. A once tight-knit, continental supply chain was fracturing before their eyes. By choosing a safer, diversified export strategy, Canada was transforming from a friendly, differential supplier into a formidable competitor in the global metals market. And U.S. industries were paying the price. Consider the automotive sector, especially the fast-growing electric vehicle market. An average EV contains about 80 kilograms of copper in its wiring, motors, and battery systems. When copper prices spiked after the tariff, analysts calculated the increase would add roughly $90 to the manufacturing cost of each new electric car. $90 per vehicle might sound minor in isolation, but across hundreds of thousands of units, it quickly ballooned into millions of dollars in extra costs every month for major automakers like Tesla and Ford. Industry experts warned that the higher costs could delay the rollout of new EV models or force price hikes on consumers that risked cooling demand in a sector already fighting for market share. The copper showdown between Washington and Ottawa is only the opening chapter of a much larger global realignment. If America can't secure stable supply lines, its industries and consumers could face an even harsher reckoning. Stay tuned, because the next move in this trade war might shock the